What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here with another Week 10 college football preview, and we have a huge ACC matchup going down in Chapel Hill this weekend that could not only has college football playoff implications, but it definitely could shake up the ACC championship race, which is wide open as we enter this final month of the regular season. November, man, this is where everything gets decided. And so we got number 9 Wake Forest traveling to Chapel Hill to take on UNC, who was a preseason top 10 team, has had some struggles, but this team has some major talent. And so I've been keeping track. This is the third straight week we've had a top 10 underdog, and UNC is the 2.5 point favorite for a game that kicks off at 11 a.m. live on ABC. But three straight weeks of top 10 underdogs. Wake Forest is the next one. And right now, you're looking at how these top 10 underdogs have done. Oregon ended up beating UCLA. Oklahoma State did actually lose to Iowa State. And last week, Ole Miss lost to Auburn. So 1-2 for these top 10 underdogs. So Wake Forest is looking to change, their luck and the luck of top 10 teams who are underdogs. But let's set the stage here, man. The Deacons, man, have entered this one at 8-0. 5-0 in the ACC. They've cracked the top 10 in all the major polls, wound up in the top 10 in the initial college football playoff rankings. But man, Dave Clawson's squad has put on an absolute show this year. They've utilized the top 5 scoring offense to fight their way to one of the best one of the best starts in school history in a long time. And they're looking to make another statement this weekend over UNC, which these teams have a long storied past, which we'll get to in a second. But on the other side, man, the Tar Heels, as much as Wake Forest has exceeded expectations, the Tar Heels have come in way below expectations. I had them go into the championship game in the ACC, and right now they're sitting at 4-4. 3-3 in the ACC, and they have been on an absolute roller coaster this season. They have not had a win streak over 2 games, and they've alternated between wins and losses for 6 weeks now. And now it's up for Sam Howell and this offense to find a way to pull off a top 10 upset this weekend. They had a big chance last weekend against Notre Dame, fell just short in their upset bid. But when you look at this series, it stretches back to 1888, one of the longest and storied rivalries in college football. But the Tar Heels hold the advantage 70-36 with 2 ties over the Deacons. But this series since 2000 is tied up 6-6. And anything can happen in Chapel Hill this weekend, as these two teams always seem to put on a great show, and anyone can win any matchup regardless of where they're ranked. So I don't think either team's coming in sleeping on their opponent. But we got the table set for one of these big matchups. Let's get into the keys of the game, and we're going to start with the Deacons of Wake Forest, man. And it's easy. It's put the ball in Sam Hartman's hands and let him do what he's done all season long, and that's go out and make plays, be explosive, lead this offense to huge production, and go win the game. Sam Hartman has taken such a large step forward that he's become the focal point of this offense. And so for me, Sam Hartman is the key for Wake Forest. Put the ball in your best player's hands and let him go make plays. And then off of that, his explosive play and his ability as a passer really allows the running backs to take advantage of some light boxes where they're so focused on these explosive wide receivers and Hartman that these Wake Forest running backs can go make some plays. So that's the key for me. Let Sam Hartman do his thing, come behind him with the run and take advantage of some light boxes and go make some plays on the ground. And you've got a chance against a UNC defense allowing almost 400 yards per game right now, and they have the 100th ranked scoring defense with allowing almost 31 points per game. So the opportunity is there for some big numbers for Wake Forest this weekend. Now, when you look at the passing attack, it's been one of the best in the country. It's been arguably the number one factor in Wake Forest having the number 5 scoring offense of the country. And Sam Hartman's development, I think, is the biggest difference that separates Wake Forest this year from previous years where they've been good. They just haven't put on a show like this. He is the reason they're in the top 10 of the country right now. You look at what he's done, almost 2,500 passing yards, 22 passing touchdowns, 6 rushing touchdowns with only 3 interceptions. Top 10 in the country in passing yards, top 5 in the country in passing efficiency, top 3 in the country in passing yards per attempt, and top 10 again in passing touchdowns in the entire country. Sam Hartman is one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the country right now, and and arguably this season in the ACC is one of, if it weren't for Kenny Pickett, you could argue he might be the best quarterback in the ACC right now. The biggest thing about Hartman this season has been his ability to put pressure on every level of the defense. He can make throws in the short game, in the intermediate range, in the deep ball, and he can push it outside the numbers, inside the numbers. His ability to put pressure on all levels and aspects of the defense makes the defense have to play damn near perfect defense every time he takes a snap, which is almost impossible. So that's why Sam Hartman's been so electric, is if you have a collapse somewhere on your defense, he's got the arm and the decision making and the ability to make you pay. So that's going to be something to watch this year. I mean, I don't want to get too stat heavy, but if you just listen to how well balanced his attack is on the short yardage, he's got over 75% completion percentage, 600 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, 41 first downs generated, and above an 80 passing grade, according to Pro Football Focus. In the intermediate range, over 600 yards again, 7 touchdowns, and a 90.5 PFF passing grade. And on deep balls, over 1,100 yards, 22 yards per attempt, 12 passing touchdowns, 14 big time throws, and has almost a 95 PFF passing grade. That is next level production at all levels of the defense. So this UNC defense is going to have to play huge this weekend, or Hartman's going to have another big game. And one of the overlooked aspects of this offense is the wide receiving core. They should get a lot of credit for what this offense is doing right now. And this passing attack has some real playmakers on the outside that I don't think get enough credit for how explosive they've been. Jaquari Robertson at wide receiver for the Deacons, he's putting himself, they have 2 receivers I think that could put themselves in the Bolitnikoff conversation, starting with Jaquari Robertson and also A.T. Perry as well. Robertson, 43 catches for over 700 yards, over 17 yards per catch, and 6 touchdowns, while Perry has over 700 yards receiving, almost 20 yards per catch, and 8 receiving touchdowns. These 2 guys can burn you over the top. They're consistent, and they're the type of playmakers where if they get some one-on-one coverage on the outside, you can trust them to go create their own play. And them and Sam Hartman have some real chemistry right now going into this game. And then on top of that, you still have Taylor Morin and Keyshawn Williams, both over 260 through the air, both with 3 receiving touchdowns each. So you have probably 4 to 5 players on the outside of this Wake Forest offense that you can trust to go have a big game and go make plays if you need to. So for me, the key for Wake Forest is to air it out, put the ball in your best player in Sam Hartman's hands, and let him distribute to these guys on the outside that should be able to have big games against this North Carolina defense. Now, on the flip side, the Tar Heels should be a bit different, but the focal point is the same. It's the quarterback. When you have someone like a Sam Howell at the QB spot, you have to put the ball in his hands as well. But because of the play action being such a bigger part of the offense for North Carolina, being balanced is the biggest key for North Carolina, because when the rushing attack and the passing attack are in sync for the Tar Heels, in keeping their opponent's defense off balance, that's when the Tar Heels are the most dangerous, and that's what they haven't been able to do consistently this season, week in and week out. And when you look, their offense is already pretty balanced this year. Over 200 on the ground, over 280 through the air, and they're averaging over 2 touchdowns on the ground and through the air per game this season. But starting with Howell, over 2,100 yards, 19 touchdowns, 7 picks, almost 600 rushing yards, and 6 rushing touchdowns. Top 5 in the ACC in passing yards, passing efficiency, and passing touchdowns. So he's one of the best quarterbacks in this conference. The biggest thing I think's been missing, and it is going to play a part with something I'm going to talk about later with the offensive line, is the deep ball for Howell. the deep ball efficiency for Howell has really dropped this season. Now, he did lose some big targets to the NFL draft last year, starting with De'Ami Brown. But this weekend, he's going to have to push the ball down the field against a defense that really and truly isn't great and does allow a lot of explosive plays. I mean, they just gave up 56 points to Army. They have trouble stopping teams on the offensive side of the ball consistently. So Sam Howell can put up some points against this Wake Forest defense, but only 18% of his dropbacks have been deep ball passes. Only 5 touchdowns, has thrown 2 picks, but he's only completing 26% of his passes beyond 20 plus yards down the field. In comparison, you know, on the other side, Hartman, he's completing almost 50% of his passes 20 plus yards down the field. And that's not great for Howell when that's been his bread and butter for the past 2 seasons. His arm strength is elite. He just hasn't had the burners outside of downs at that wide receiver spot to go get the deep ball. And he has just been missing it. And he also hasn't had great protection because those deep routes take more time to develop. And the offensive line has not been great for Howell. So that's the number one thing that's been missing from this UNC offense for me. But some positives, he does work really well off the play action. And that's why I picked being balanced as the number one key, because almost 50% of his dropbacks have come off the play action this year. He's generated almost 60 first downs off of play action concepts. He's thrown for over 1,200 yards, 14 touchdowns, has 8 big time throws off the play action. So that is where Howell can really thrive this weekend. If they can get that running game moving and Howell has some time in the pocket, I think he could have a big game this weekend. And the QB battle between Hartman and Howell is going to be absolutely electric. This is going to be a game you are going to want to tune into at 11 a.m. Now, the Tar Heels lost a lot of talent at the running back spot. You look at Javonte Williams and Michael Carter, both doing huge things in the NFL. But Tennessee transfer Todd Chandler has done an excellent job for this offense, and he's going to be a key player for the Tar Heels this weekend. Over 600 yards rushing, 5.5 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns. He's top 5 in the ACC in rushing yards, touchdowns, and yards, and he's top 10 in yards per carry. So he's been extremely efficient at the running back spot, but they're really missing that 1-2 punch that they had last year because Carter and Javonte Williams were the best duo in college football. Chandler's doing his part. I just think the Tar Heels are missing those two guys from last year more than a lot of people expected. Now, when you look at how they do it, though, the Tar Heels are great in terms of outside running off the tackle and bouncing runs off the edge as well. That's going to put a lot of pressure on the DNs and outside linebackers for Wake Forest to go make some plays. They're going to have to be disciplined, and those safeties are going to have to be able to come up and make tackles in the open field, or things can get out of hand for this Wake Forest defense against this rushing attack. Now they have over 500 yards rushing, 6.5 yards per carry, 7 rushing touchdowns, 12 explosive runs, and over 20 first downs generated from off tackle and outside running for the Tar Heels. So for me, you've got to establish the run to help Howell out in terms of the offensive line protection and get that play action working, because if Howell has time and he can make some plays down the field, North Carolina has a chance to put up a lot of points this weekend. It could pull off a huge upset in front of the home crowd in Chapel Hill. Now, for the matchup to watch, I had a real tough time. There were so many I wanted to pick, but for me, the number one thing is the offensive line for North Carolina against this Wake Forest defensive line, because that's going to be the number one X factor this weekend, is whether this offensive line can put Howell in good positions to make plays, especially against this strong defensive front of the Deacons. When you look at the O-line for the Tar Heels, that's been the biggest question mark for 2 years for this team. They ranked dead last in the ACC with over 31 sacks allowed this season, and Sam Howell's play has really suffered at times along with the running game against good defenses. Now, the O-line has so much experience. They're all upperclassmen. This week is going to be a huge test. They've allowed 2 or more sacks in all but 2 games this season, and they've allowed four sacks the past 2 games. Marcus McClellan and Jordan Tucker are going to have to step up as senior leaders on this O-line. They're the 2 highest graded O-linemen on this team. McClellan, with an 82.8 pass blocking grade, is by far the best pass blocker on this team. But the number one issue has been pressure up the middle. If you even go back to week 1 against Virginia Tech, you know, they got a lot of pressure from their edge guys because they just have elite edge guys at Virginia Tech. But also, there were multiple snaps where Howell was just trying to throw a quick slant, and as soon as he got the snap, the defensive tackle was smacking him. You cannot allow pressure up the middle this weekend. If you're UNC, that cannot happen. Pressure up the middle and breaking down the pocket is one of the worst things you could happen to a quarterback. And so for me, they gotta shore up the middle of this offensive line. Now, Howell under pressure has been a different quarterback as well. Only 41% completion percentage, only 370 total yards, 6 touchdowns, 3 picks, but a 47.7 passing grade according to Pro Football Focus under pressure. The number one thing is to keep Howell's jersey clean. If they can do that, if that beautiful blue for UNC is clean on Saturday, they got a great chance to win. But if he is consistently on the ground or running for his life, the Tar Heels could be in trouble this weekend. Now, for the front seven of the Demon Deacons, they are top three, number 3 in the ACC in sacks for the season with almost 30 sacks through their first 8 games. The D line has been one of the bright spots of this defense for the Demon Deacons, so that's going to be a big X factor this weekend is can they continue that production? They have 8 different players with 2 or more sacks. Luigi Villanin off the edge is huge with 5 sacks. He's going to play a big part. Rondell Bethroyd, 4 sacks, 14 QB hurries. Miles Fox from the defensive tackle spot, 3 sacks, 12 hurries. And Jasheen Davis, 2 sacks and 9 hurries off the edge. They have so many guys they can rotate in and out, and they're all great pass rushers, and they got some guys that can really get after the quarterback. So if the Demon Deacons can force Howell into some mistakes, get the offense a few more extra possessions, some great field position, the Demon Deacons are going to be in a great opportunity to pull off a huge road win to solidify their resume for the playoff committee. Now, for the prediction, listen, if you've watched this podcast before, if you watched this show before, I'm a huge I was a huge Sam Howell fan, head of the Sam Howell fan club, as my co-host Brandon called me. But for me this weekend, I trust the Wake Forest defense just to make one stop, man. UNC's defense has not been able to step up to the task over the past few weeks. So for me, I trust Sam Hartman just to make a play or two more. I trust the D line of Wake Forest to get after the quarterback and make one stop. It's going to come down to who can make one stop in this game to win. And so I trust Wake Forest right now just a bit more than UNC. I got the Demon Deacons staying undefeated, moving to 9-0 with a 48-41 win over the Tar Heels, a one-score game, and I think it's going to be a shootout. I think this is going to be one of the best games to watch of the weekend, so tune in at 11 o'clock on ABC, and I cannot wait to see how this one turns out. But a 7-point win for Wake Forest, 48-41 over the Tar Heels. If you're new, smash the subscribe button, smash the like button, and comment your score predictions below. Comment your takeaways from the game, what you're looking for, everything like that, man. I appreciate y'all's support so much. And I'll be back tomorrow with some more game previews. But for right now, man, the Blue Bloods are out.